Hello again, friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Amy, and I'm glad you decided to join me for chapter 6 of the book that I wrote, Legends, Orbs of the Elements. I hope everybody is having an awesome Thursday. I know I am. The week is almost wrapping up. Yay! We've got a fun Halloween party to go on Saturday, which I'm so looking forward to. Yeah, so without further ado, let's start chapter 6. And again, if you are interested in purchasing this book, I will tell you all the fun, juicy details at the end of the video. Chapter 6. John had gotten little sleep. When he did sleep, he was disturbed by nightmares of his wife's cries for help. Cold water was flung on his face. His eyes came suddenly open. He was blinking hard. Lincoln and Refa were on each side of him. Lincoln put an empty goblet on the table. John saw a bowl of some sort of off-white slop. The wizard and witch didn't speak at first. When Lincoln took the bowl with a wooden spoon in it and scooped a large amount into John's mouth, it felt thick and sticky. There was no flavor, good or bad. Lincoln got another scoopful and shoved it into the prisoner's mouth. It did not give John much time to swallow the first bite. Refa didn't say a word, but kept watch over the prisoner's face as he began to panic as Lincoln again got another scoopful ready before he could swallow his second bite. At last, Refa put a hand in front of John's face to stop him. Lincoln glared at her for a moment. "Wait a minute. Give him a chance to swallow, unless you want me to inform the prince you have killed his prisoner," she said, with a little authority in her voice. Lincoln snarled at her and put the bowl down. John managed to finally swallow. He coughed a bit. Both the wizard and witch seemed to be waiting for something from John. The prisoner was just mute. "I'll go tell the prince he will have a dinner guest tonight," Lincoln announced, and hurriedly left the room without further delay. John breathed out. Lincoln, from observation, was more forceful, while Refa was more manipulative. "Queen Refa, may I have a drink?" he asked, sounding very worn out. She got up and picked up a goblet and held it up to the prisoner's dried lips. He drank slowly. When John had drunk his fill, he spoke. "Thank you, Queen Refa." She put the goblet back on the table. Then she unlocked his hand shackles. "You're welcome," she said at last, not looking at him. John now sat halfway up. His feet shackles were still locked, but to him it felt great. From out of nowhere, she handed him his shirt. It was mended. The prince liked to see his prisoners come to him the way they are, Refa explained. There was something different about Refa. She was just as cruel as Lincoln, but at the same time, she seemed to understand that you get more flies with honey. John put on his shirt. As the shirt came over his head, it reminded him of his home. Refa then unlocked his feet shackles. John stiffly tested his legs. When he felt sure of himself, he got up from the table. Refa had her arms crossed. "Come, it's time to dine with the prince. Keep up, or I will strike you," she said harshly, with much authority in her voice. John nodded. As the two of them walked, John marveled at the beautiful stained glass windows. Some had pictures of birds on them. On the walls of many halls there were wall hangings of many types of sizes and colors. John then made a great effort to keep up. He didn't want to find out what Refa was capable of. He already knew the cruel ways of the wizard Lincoln. John had to bring himself to a swift halt as they came to a large brass double door with carvings of the countryside on them. A servant was waiting for both of them. The servant then opened the doors. What John saw was amazing. There was a long, polished table and plates on both sides of the table. At the end of the table was the prince. He was dressed in his usual blue robe attire. Lincoln sat close to the prince. Rifa and John came close. "Ah, Rifa, good to see you," the prince said. She bowed. "This must be John. How pleased I am to see you." Rifa roughly shoved John to his knees. "Prince Nero," John said, with hate and anger apparent in his voice. The room was lit by candles. It gave the room a warm glow. "Lincoln, I wish for you not to join me for dinner. I have sent dinner to your room already. Rifa, the same goes for you, but I want to have a word with you later." Lincoln was disappointed, but did not dare to complain. He got up and now stood by Rifa. "Yes, my lord," they said as one, and left the room. John wished they had stayed. Now he was alone with the most powerful man in the world. The prince rang a small silver bell. Two servants came in and set two trays of food down. One was for Nero and the other one was for John. The servants then stood to one side. "John, please come sit with me. I want to talk." John slowly made his way to the table and reluctantly sat down. The servants poured wine for the both of them in glass goblets with gold rings around the rim of them. "How do I know it is not poisoned?" John asked. Prince Nero took a sip of his drink. "Would you feel better if I took a few bites?" the prince asked in an almost teasing way. John nodded in a sarcastic manner. The prince shrugged. He used his utensils and began to eat. John eyed every forkful. On the fourth bite, John realized that, in fact, the meal wasn't damaged. Then he began to eat hungrily. The two men were about halfway done when the prince spoke. "I bet you're wondering why you're here. Well, I'll tell you. Over the years, I have learned many torture skills. Sometimes, however, the worry and the uncertainty of not knowing where or if a loved one is where a loved one is will drive them mad or to the point of death, and they end up doing themselves in, and no blood on my hands. Not that I mind blood on my hands, of course," Nero said, quite satisfied with his speech. John stopped eating and eyed him coldly. "So that is your plan for me?" Nero chuckled and shook his head. "Oh dear, no. I have no plans for you, good fellow, but that is for me to know and for you to find out." When they were done eating, the servants took their plates away. Nero stayed where he was. New servants came out. They had 2 plates with a piece of cake for each of them. Nero again took the first bite. John also ate the piece of cake in front of him. At last the meal was over. John was fuller than he had remembered. Nero signaled a guard to come forward. The man came close. "Take the prisoner back to his lodgings." The man grabbed John's arm. Then he and John made their way to the door. Once he was alone, Nero got up from the table. He took his time and walked up a circular staircase. He stopped walking when he came to the third door on the right. He tapped on the door once. Rifa stood there. "Good evening, my master. You wanted to see me?" she addressed him. Nero shook his head. "Let's take a walk." He offered her his hand without the ring. She smiled a half smile and took his hand. They walked the length of the fortress. "What do you think of things? Don't be afraid. I know you don't like Lincoln," Nero said in a friendly tone. She bowed. "My lord, it is important you capture more land and set up troops. That way, no matter where the legend is, you will also, in a way, be there too." He nodded to the witch's good thinking. "Yes, I see your point. Lincoln had also told me other things. He says you're going soft on the prisoner." Nero watched her. Her body grew slightly tense, then relaxed. My lord, I did not feel it was important to cram gruel into his mouth until he almost choked, she said, trying to defend herself, but still not trying to speak ill of Lincoln. Yes, I know he can be a bit overpowering at times. You are you are good you are good opposites. He is straightforward, powerful, and you are mentally and me- me- meticulous. She turned away at this statement. Come now, Rifa. Tomorrow, would you like to join me in a game of Lords? She turned suddenly back to him in surprise. Me? He nodded and patted her hand with his hand that had a sapphire ring on it. Why, of course you. I don't want to play favorites, and I have been paying much attention to Blinken. Well, you're just as important to me. As they headed back, Rifa said, Thank you, my lord. Nero nodded understandingly. Before he left, he kissed her on the top of her hand. He needed to check on something before he went to sleep that night. He entered the room with the large glass globe. He moved his hand across it. Prince Nero saw many ships on fire. As he continued to look, he spied the people were now compliant and handed a chest full of money to the captain. Excellent, Nero thought to himself as he climbed into his luxurious, pampered bed. So that is all of chapter 6. Thank you so much for listening. If you are interested in reading along with me or reading this on your own, it can be found on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Apple iBooks, and lots of other places. Also, if you like this story and want to learn more in depth about some of the characters and settings, I have a Facebook page that is called it is Legends, sorry. It is called Legends Orbs of the Elements. And I have written, I believe, 3 different topics about this book. Don't worry, there are no spoilers. It's just some good blurbs on how I the last info I wrote was about how I created the different lands and territories. The first thing I wrote was how I came up with the characters' names of Leon and Castilla. So if you guys are interested in reading more into the characters and the background and some of the cool insight, I would highly suggest you go check that out and follow it. I really want to try my best to write a new article Monday through Friday. So definitely stay tuned and be reading up on all the little insights. Again, I will do my best not to write things that are spoiler related or necessarily about the book, so that way if you want to know how the story ends and not be spoiled, you guys will be fine, if that makes sense. If you are interested in seeing more about the sequel to the book that I have written, I am on TikTok. You can find me at Idaho Dragon. There I'm posting some cool, fun, as much as I can, TikTok stuff all about my new book. So again, if you want to find out and see some cool stuff, definitely go check that out. I am so enjoying reading this book, and I hope you are. In the comments down below, let me know what territories that I've mentioned so far that you guys think that you would like to live in if you lived in this world that I've created, whether it's the Southern Woods, the Sanctuary where the legends live, the Eastern Coast, or the Northern Highlands. Really love to know. Again, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, share with friends and family, and I will see you tomorrow to wrap up the week. Bye-bye for now, everybody.